Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show I do twice a week where I throw a little chaos into Star Trek by reviewing a random episode. So, today's random episode is from Enterprise, Season 2, Episode 11, Precious Cargo. And in this episode, starts off with Trip in his quarters, and he's practicing his harmonica, which I don't think we ever see ever again and throughout the rest of the series. And then he gets a message from Archer. Well, the ship comes to a stop. And he looks around and he gets a message from Archer and Archer says that they have visitors, which he can see outside of his window, and um, ask him if he can help with some repair work, even though he's off duty, and says that these people are having trouble with one of their life support systems, and that's pretty much the teaser there. So, um, so then we get Archer to Paul and Tucker in the corridors heading towards the docking ring, docking bay 2, I think. And they do the docking sequence, and two alien guys come aboard, and they introduce themselves. And Archer asks about their life support systems, and he says, "We have a stasis pod. We are carrying a woman in a stasis pod, and we need repairs on it because if she wakes up earlier than that she's supposed to, we're not going to have enough resources to feed her and the rest of my crew and stuff." And they have a long journey that's supposed to be like 5 months or so. And the alien Archer or the alien is asked to stay a night uh, because they haven't seen other people in a while, and you know, as I said, it's been a long journey. And Archer agrees. He's very friendly with these people. They seem to be friendly. He tells to Paul to arrange quarters for them, and says that he'll talk to the chef about making a meal for them. And then on board their ship, Trip is there, and he's looking around and he's looking at the control panels for this stasis pod, and it's obviously an alien language, and he says that he would need Hoshi to come on board to bring a translator and to help translate some of this language. To which they agree. So Hoshi comes on board, and before Hoshi comes on board, he wipes away some of the frost on the stasis pod, and it reveals there's a attractive woman that he looks at. And so then back on Enterprise, Archer is talking about how he's talking to the main guy about how their ship can only reach like warp 2, and he says, well, we can reach warp 2.2. And he says that his ship is faster and can get where they're going faster, and they could take her out of stasis because they have plenty of room on board. to which he replies that it's not that simple. She's supposed to rendezvous with her parents, which her parents aren't even on their way there yet, and that it's a little more complicated than that. And basically refuses the help. So Hoshi brings the translator, and Trip is kind of staring at the woman, and she says that it's not polite to stare, and he counters that he wasn't staring when he clearly was. And then she leaves the translator behind and goes back to Enterprise. Then all of a sudden you start hearing like this knocking sound, and he looks around and thinks it's Hoshi, but she's already gone. And it turns out it's the woman in the stasis pod. She's tapping on the glass, trying to get out. So the other guy comes back, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, she's suffocating. You need to help me, open this thing." So he helps her open it, and she pops out of it, and her hands are tied. So she's clearly been kidnapped. So the guy bonks T'Pol on the head, and then the other alien guy is with, or not T'Pol, Trip. The other alien guy is with T'Pol and Archer eating dinner, and he gets a call, and he says that something has gone wrong with the stasis pod, and that he needs to get back there. So then the guy's like heading back, and they start to get nervous, and Archer sends Malcolm and another security member to follow the guy, because he's kind of suspicious, because he tries to call Trip on the communicator, and can't get a hold of him. So he is kind of suspicious of this guy, and rightfully so. So the guy pulls out his phaser and starts shooting, and we get a little bit of a shootout in the corridors with Malcolm, and then they kind of escape back to their ship, and Archer tells them to lock down the docking clamps, but they break free from the docking clamps, just in the nick of time. So then they chase after him and easily catch up to him, because again they're only capable of warp 2 or warp 2.2, and he tells Hoshi to hail them, and she says that there's no response. So then he tells Malcolm to raise the phase cannons and fire at them, which he does, and they drop out of warp. And as they drop out of warp, we see some sort of gas come out of the back of the ship, and then they go to warp, and he says, I thought you disabled their warp capabilities," and he says that he thought so as well. And then they attempt to go to warp, and the gas has gotten into like the plasma vents and has to be cleared out, and makes it so that they're not capable of going to warp. Back on their ship, Trip wakes up, and the woman that that's been tied up, or hands tied, has like a crowbar looking thing in her hand, and she's threatening to hit Trip when he he's trying to say that he's not part of their group, and he was just here to repair the stasis pod, and that he he's looking for the translator because he can't really understand what she's saying, and she doesn't really understand what he's saying. So then he agrees to untie her, which she understands that, like, to a point. Um, he unties her, and she, I guess, says thank you in her language. And then he talks about how he needs the universal translator, and she finds it and starts to hand it to him, and then hesitates because she thinks maybe, I guess, it's a weapon or something. And so he convinces her to hand it over and tells her to start talking. Does this motion. Uh, so she's talking and talking and talking, and he says something along the lines of, I need more. I need you to say more. And he says that he wishes Hoshi was there, and that's when she eventually says, in English, who's Hoshi? And then he explains the situation that she's been. Well, they go over. They sort of have a conversation about what has happened, and that she has been kidnapped, and they probably want some sort of ransom because she's royalty of some. She's like a princess. Uh, and I could have sworn that he called her princess in this episode, but um, prior to watching it today, but apparently he never did. I guess I'm just mixing up with Star Wars. So then the bad guy, when the kidnapper comes in, he's pointing his phaser at Trip and says to get to work on fixing this stasis pod. He wants to put her back in stasis, and so he agrees and says it's going to take a few hours. And he leaves, and then Trip starts discussing plans to, like, escape. And she doesn't want to escape. She thinks that her government's going to come and rescue her, and it would be foolish to try to escape because the guy threatened to kill him, and Trip says, "Yeah, I know. That's why I want to escape." He tries to convince her that she would be better off coming with him, and she's not quite convinced of it. And he says at some point during their conversation that it feels like we've gone to warp. So that indicates to me that that when you're on the ship, you can feel the warp, going to warp, or maybe an increase of warp speed. So I guess it's kind of like when you feel when you're in an airplane and you feel the takeoff. Maybe that's what it kind of feels like. Because like when you're driving down the road, obviously you can feel sort of when you're going faster or slower. But if you're maintaining speed, it's all, just, you don't really feel it that much. Obviously in an airplane, if you have G-forces and you're like a fighter jet, obviously they can feel that increase. But there's no atmosphere in space, so there's got to be, I guess, the atmosphere in the ship is what causes that feeling. It's something I never really thought about, but they mention it, so I thought about it. Back on Enterprise, Archer is asking the guy that got left behind where they're going, and he doesn't know, and he needs information of like maybe their warp signature or something, and he doesn't know that either. And he tells, is it Malcolm? I think he tells Malcolm to put him in a back in the docking port two in the airlock, but he'll leave the other side unlocked in case he wants to escape. Basically, kind of threatening him, but not torturing him like he did in season 3 with the during the Xindi arc. So anyway, back on the bad guy's ship, and I don't know their names, but Trip is trying to again trying to escape, trying to convince her to go with him, and finally she agrees. She realizes that maybe this is not going to work exactly the way you may think it's going to work, or I guess he says that, and she kind of agrees. And it reminded me of there's a Quantum Leap episode called The Leaping of the Shrew, and it's got Brooke Shields in it. And that's probably one of the reasons why I remember it, is because of her. But this is like a classic TV and movie trope where you have like this roughneck guy and a high class woman, and they get stranded together, or they're put in a situation together. Like Han and Leia, for example. That's probably the most famous example. Or like the Moonlighters, if anybody watched that show back in the day, where they're adversaries at first, and then throughout the episode or the movie, or a course of movies, in the case of Han and Leia, they fall in love. And this is in that episode, Leaping of the Shoes, the same. Sam leaps into like a Greek. He's like a Greek sailor, or works on this ship that went down, and Brooke Shields is like this upper class woman, who comes from a rich family, and the ship goes down, and they escape together in this life raft. And it also happened in Pirates of the Caribbean to a lesser extent, where Elizabeth and Jack Sparrow are stranded on an island together. And that's where the famous line, "Where did all the rum go?" Because she used it to set up to start a fire, to send up a smoke signal for her to be rescued. I think it was in the second one. They don't fall in love, but same kind of similar situation, trope. This one, so it's been done to death. I can't think of other versions, but those are the ones that stand out to me. So back on Enterprise, the prisoner is Malcolm says, or Archer's in this room with a table and a chair, and low lighting, and Malcolm comes in and says, "The prisoners, I've brought the prisoner in to your request." And Archer starts talking to him about how he's going to be put on trial, and he says that he's done nothing wrong, and he names the crimes that he's committed: kidnapping, attacking a starship, interfering with or obstructing a investigation. And he says that he's not subject to their laws. And then Archer makes up this thing about how T'Pol is Vulcan from who's been sent in as a magistrate, and he kind of scares him a little bit and says that, if you're late for your shift, you might get a beating. Uh, and tries to make it out like she's like this big badass person that's if he doesn't speak up soon, that she's gonna put him in a death camp or something, And then DePaul walks out, asking him a question like his height and how much he weighs. Simple questions, and he gets confused about it. And then she says that, and she has like this robe, which is a typical Vulcan, meditation robe or whatever. But it makes her look like she's some sort of magistrate or something. And she doesn't say anything that is a lie, but it's kind of intimidating the way she says it. So then he walks away, or she walks away, says the trial will be in the morning. And then Archer says, the guy's like pleading with Archer. He says that she owes him a few favors, that he could try to spare him, but they need that information for the warp signature. And then so I guess he caves at that point. So back in the escape pod, they get to the escape pod, and they are trying to they set a course for their local star system, where Trip believes there's a habitable planet that they can land and hide out on until they can contact Enterprise. And they have they have these scenes back and forth of like her and Trip like bickering and stuff, and she's ordering him around, and he says that he's not a subject of hers, and he's trying to. She eventually gets hungry. She's like, "Can we look for food?" And he says that he's busy. Says to look in that hatch there. They find some water and some what looks to be beef jerky. And he takes a drink of water, and then she hands it to her, and she kind of wipes it off. And he says that he doesn't have any diseases. And she reluctantly drinks the water. And then he has to make some repairs, and they bicker back and forth, and he says, we have to get to this this planet, and I can't do the things that I need to do if you're just gonna sit there and argue with me the whole time, and we need to try to get along with each other. So she agrees that she would try, and then says that she is that he's sitting on her hand. And it's supposed to be like a kind of funny moment. Then they get to this planet, and she points out that it's all water, and he points to like these little islands that they can land on. And he also talks about how the pod reminds him of his first car, and then she doesn't know what a car is, so he has to explain it's a 4-wheel, terrestrial vehicle, and tells this story so that they start to slowly get along, as these type of episodes or movies go. Then they crash land, and it's like a swampy area. And they search for a spot to camp out for the night. And then she notices that Trip is bleeding and demands that he take off his shirt so she can help with the healing. And that's another aspect of this trope, where one or the other has to be nursed back to health, or, And there's a couple of Quantum Leap episodes like this where Sam doesn't get along with this woman. Like there's one where he leapt into his like great grandfather or something, and he she's like this Southern belle, and he's like a Yankee, and they have to fall in love. And there's several other episodes of Quantum Leap that are very much like this. So. Uh, so then she cleans his wound, and then they're like, she's like, she goes out and searches for firewood and brings like these little handful of sticks and throws them on the ground, and she's pissed off at him. Now she's in her nightgown, she's taking her dress off, and she's got her hair down now, and he gets pissed off at her because she had, when she was cleaning his wound, she says, I need you for you're like my only hope for survival out here, so I need you to be healthy. You don't know if you're gonna get infected or whatever, so I need to clean your room. So he agrees and takes his shirt off, and she cleans his wound, and then he gets mad because she didn't find enough sticks to make a fire, and she says that it's the only sticks she could find that were dry enough because it's like a swampy area. Um, Troop, you have to go to Dagobah. Sorry. Uh, wrong. Science fiction IP. Uh, so then they argue over the wood, and he says that she needs to go get it because he reminds her that she had said that they that he was her only hope for survival. Trip, help me, Trip Kenobi, you're my only hope. There again, switching the wrong Star franchise. Then they do the old. She slaps him, and they roll in the mud, and then they kiss and make out and stuff. So then they've like fallen in love, and then it's the middle of the night. All of a sudden, you hear this noise that Trip runs to the pod, and it's the homing beacon. So he rips out some wires because he doesn't know. She asks what that noise was, and he says it's the homing beacon, but we don't know if it's Archer or the other guy. It turns out it's the other guy. He's like trying to sneak up on their camp, but Trip is waiting for him in a tree above him, and so he jumps on him and ambushes him, and they get into a tough fight where eventually Trip beats him and knocks him out, and he's looking for the weapon when all of a sudden they hear another noise of people walking through the woods, and it's Archer. It's Archer, T'Pol, and I think Malcolm. And so they rescue them, and we see the ship, and it ends with Archer giving a log saying that it's September 12th, 2152. And then Trip and the princess are talking as she's leaving and to rendezvous with her ship, or her people. And they have this conversation about how the royalty doesn't really mingle with commoners, but since she's going to become the new queen or whatever, she could make that change, and that Trip could come and visit her someday. And then they kind of smile, and she walks away. So it's kind of a mediocre episode. Uh, I gave it a 5 out of 10. Middle of the road. There's just because as as I've said, we've seen this kind of story before. Um, so of course you're gonna do it with Star Trek. We may have even seen it. Oh yeah, we did see it. We saw it with Worf and Ezri, where they were on some mission, and Ezri Ezri's not really pleased with Worf, but she has Jadzia's memories, and I guess it's done better in Deep Space Nine. Yeah, and you've seen it. You've seen it in other. Uh, we kind of saw it with Picard and Beverly, where their minds were linked together. Um, Trying to think, like, I'm sure it's been done. It's probably been done on every series, to be honest. And it looks like something got frozen. Mm. I'm like frozen up. Can Well, anyway, Michelle Ferry's here. Says hello. She says that I thought Trip called her princess. Maybe he did, or Your Highness. I think Quantum Leap was such a good show. The classic one, not the newer one. Yeah. Um, I don't know what's going on. So Michelle says she can hear me, but I'm frozen. Yeah, that's weird. Never had that happen before. I've seen it happen to other people. So anyway, I'm glad you're here, Michelle. Thanks for coming out. Let's go to. Uh, so I can't show you that I'm doing the random uh, episode generator, but it's still stuck on that episode. So I'm gonna randomize it again. And we're back to Voyager. Voyager season 4. So there's a better chance that it's going to be a better episode. Season, Voyager season 4, episode 5, Revulsion. I don't remember that episode. She says, I hope you don't get a Voyager episode. Well, I did. I got a Voyager episode. So, Revulsion. It doesn't ring a bell. I know that I've seen it, but it doesn't ring a bell. Anyway, I want to thank Michelle Ferry Fairy Tales for coming out and for coming out tonight and watching the stream. And anyone that is lurking or that sees this in the future, thanks a lot. I'm the Dead Man. This is the Red Hour. You're watching it on the Grateful Trek channel. I'll be back tomorrow night, 8 p.m. for a review of Revulsion, Voyager, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.